Please join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the May 1st, 2019 meeting. Do I hear a first or a second or any questions? Questions first. Then I need a motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous. Approval of the bill invoice number 8 for Turowski 2. Any questions on the bill? I need a first and a second.
Motion approved. Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous. Approval of Hill International invoice number 13. Any questions?
No question, but I will point out that we were able to correct the past amount, so thank you for the
Good job, thank you. I need a motion.
motion to approve.
Second? All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous. Old business, design updates.
Okay, we have a public forum at 7, and we have a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can. And if we don't cover things, maybe we have another meeting to cover some of the things. So some design updates. I handed out a life cycle cost and assessment that was done by our engineer since our last meeting on this building, based on the selected system. We're going to review the list of alternates that we're going to be carrying forward for the cost estimator. It doesn't mean they will all be alternates ultimately going forward, but things that give you alternative costs to consider, either bringing into the base cost or eliminating altogether as we submit the schematic design submission and develop the final budget. Voting on proprietary items. I think we have some additional service items that David was going to present tonight. No? But maybe not on traffic study, but and then David's going to go over project funding agreement and reimbursement rate. So design updates. I'll let Nate quickly just run through this. We just had a meeting with the outdoor working group and spent quite a lot of time and discussion on this. So I'll just do a brief overview.
Yeah. So we have heard back from you all about how the existing parking lot is managed during pickup and drop off for buses and parents. This is an updated schematic site plan where we've incorporated some additional thoughts about parking and pickup and drop off on the site. So the entry drive, still a bus loop to the south of the building, combined with the playground, which we've talked about previously here, and then parking to the east, and then a low ropes course and fitness play area that could be used by the gym to the northwest of the gym, a wetland gathering space and wetland walk here to the west of the school, a gathering space in the woods, and then the high school regulation baseball field would be here, and the multi-purpose field would be here. This is zooming in within the play area that's combined with the bus loop. We were thinking of a combination of net climbers, swings, embankment slides, and stepping stones and logs for kids to climb and stand on. And then some of those low ropes elements here again. Basketball court here and a half court basketball in the bus loop. This bus loop would be separated from traffic outside of pickup and drop-off times. From the working group meeting earlier, we were discussing ways to do it without a gate, with a chain, or with a raised curb. But when outside of pickup and drop-off, this would be a plowable play space. And then during pickup and drop-off, it would be used as a bus loop for the school. There was some concern from various folks about this pinch point, so we've been doing some thinking about how we might be able to improve traffic here. The current plan shows buses turning left and then cars coming up in a dedicated turn lane here, turning right. So there is in this configuration, limited conflict between left turning buses and cars turning out when the buses are entering the bus loop. Some options that we looked at were roundabout, which is pretty complicated and doesn't really solve the problems. And something like this that is similar to the traffic flow in the current proposal, but something maybe a slightly different version, more modest version of this may help improve traffic flow and ease the turning radiuses for different vehicles. So we probably will incorporate something in between this and the what's currently in for cost estimate. But this plan has all of the elements that would give you a good cost estimate that will be representative of the kinds of things that you'll likely want to see in your school at this stage in the process. We also have the roof deck with some simple planters in the corner, similar to what we have at the Jacobs School. It could be seating, picnic tables, and weather stations could be located up on that deck to keep them away from vandalism or other things. And then another roof deck off the art classroom in the front of the school. So again, free play in front of the school, managed play in the back of the school. Here's some images of some of those elements. Some things that we talked about: Gaga ball, if you're familiar with that, frisbee, volleyball, and then soccer and baseball on the major fields, and then basketball. Traversing wall, low ropes, swings. These are the outdoor education spaces, gathering spaces in orange, garden beds and planters in green, and sort of entry plazas at the three major entries to the building in brown. And those outdoor classroom spaces would have features related to kind of the mill history, dealing with water and industry, decks in the wetland areas and paths to use your existing woodlands. And then the site also includes a lot of green infrastructure, rain gardens, and gravel wetlands to manage stormwater, both in the parking lot and then around the perimeter of the site, and some incorporated into the outdoor education curriculum. So that's where we are with the site plan.
Any questions or thoughts?
Just about the paths to the outdoor classroom. What were you thinking in terms of how those would be created, maintained? Would they be decked the whole way through for accessibility purposes?
Yeah, we're thinking of at-grade deck for the length of it. Any spaces in the wetland, potentially not a full deck with piers, but a deck that has kind of a low-key elevated deck on sleepers that would allow some water flow if we get into the wetland. Everywhere else would be an at-grade deck.
Okay. And then, was there any thought given to adding some kind of cross-country loop additionally around, like down the driveway and up?
The sense for that, well, right now we have this additional gathering space in the woodland over here. And so what we're thinking is that this would be part of the contract, would be providing accessible paths to these spaces, which begins to set up the framework of a loop. And then the community could continue that loop into a full 5K course, including some of the existing sort of non-paved paths through the site, like one that actually goes down, starts at the ball field and goes near that development that's west of the school. So it would be the beginning of a 5K loop that could be built on.
Awesome. So, playground, where it is, how quickly does that melt snow based on the sun is going to hit that? I'm thinking along the lines of wintertime outdoor play space. So when that's covered in snow,
Right.
you have this limited area to outdoor space for yourself. You know, and living in the woodland, I mean, that could be anywhere from November to April.
Right. Well, outside would be plowable, so that would help. And then there we'd have asphalt pass through the center, and it's poured in place rubber. You can't really plow that. Other schools, you know, I think you can.
It could be snow blown pretty quickly. You could blow the snow into the loop and then plows and push it to the outside. So it's, if you wanted to plow any playground, that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Hand
It
equipment.
is on the south side of the school purposefully, so it'll be warmer throughout the year.
And it sheet flows into rain gardens on this side, so it will drain very easily, and it's on the south side. And we talked about potentially including pervious paving within that, which will help with your drainage a bit, and plowable. So
You could heat it. You have that in the budget.
Anything else?
I noticed there were 3 spots for electric vehicles. Is that required as part of the rebate program, or is that?
It's a lead point. It's part of a lead point. Yeah. So plan updates. So this is just to focus in on the 6th grade classroom wing, 5th and 6th grade classroom wing. So we did decide to elevate that one wing to work with the grading across the site. So just that one wing starting at this point is elevated. This is a slope walkway. It's not a ramp. There would be lockers along it. So it would be like a graded sidewalk and not a ramp. So there would be no requirement for handrails or anything like that. And then we started to populate the classrooms with furniture. We're working with a pretty standard modular desk, because there was a lot of debate about use of tables versus desks amongst the teachers. So this allows a teacher to configure desks together in groups of 1, 2, 3, 4, up to table size. That's the greatest flexibility for that kind of use. Just starting to work with the model, starting to render the inside. We did meet with the materials working group last week and came up with sort of an approach for the exterior windows and brick treatment and the amount of brick, the interior. So we're looking at this kind of multiple pattern window with large awning units, perhaps about 3 or 4 in each classroom, and then one window that's extra large that would be a window seat in each classroom, built along the window wall. And then a change since last meeting was the slope of the roof over the flex spaces. We had shown the slope of the roof running as a shed roof facing forward previously. Now we're running the shed front to back, which allows us to get a clear story north-facing light into this flex space rather than skylights. So it's diffuse light, there's no glare, and it's eliminating skylights, which we think has a real benefit. And I think it reduces the height overall as well. Be a lot of wood. The lockers would be encased with wood. These are the flex spaces beyond. This is the opening into the floor that would let light filter down to the lower level, and windows into the classrooms, but up high enough that when children are seated and at their desks, they're not distracted with what's going on outside of the classrooms. The media center. So since last time we met, we discussed with the school a bit more about the need to really secure this room off, and we had shown it sort of open and permeable all the time without doors, but there is the feeling with this school being used after hours a lot by different groups, the junior high basketball league and so forth, that this room should be securable. So we've adapted the design a little bit to have doors at either end here. So there's steps up to doors. At this point, you enter and can run down a slope walkway down to the lower level. The media center is depressed about 2 feet, so we get some height in there because the outdoor classroom's above it, and we'll have a bit of a dropped roof structure to support that. We'll have one opening here into the media center that will be stepped and kind of associated with the grand stair that will also expand out to this sort of large seating area in the hallway. And this will be gated with either a security gate or something like that. It won't be an egress door, so it can be closed and not open during school hours. And ingress and egress would be through these two doors. We've also developed the side of the stage. There's an elevated ramp. This is a true ramp going up to the point which you would transition to the music room or to the back of the stage. And along the corridor, we've created this sort of stadium seating along the corridor for a gathering space there as well. So it's not just a hallway with possibly whiteboard along here, so something could happen there in that space along the corridor. And the music room and stage are very multifunctional, so there'll be a horizontal sliding curtain, so it looks like a traditional stage with a curtain drawn. There'll be an operable partition that will rise up out of the way to allow it to be used as stage, but closed during the day, and perhaps the curtain drawn to allow the music teacher to use this space for music lessons. And then there'd be a back curtain that would enclose the back of the stage when it is used as a stage. And we're still working with the school to determine whether there's a need for a movable partition here, but we're showing one here as well now between the two music rooms to allow the greatest flexibility. Any questions or thoughts?
How many students would you foresee to be able to fit in that hallway space adjacent to the stage?
Probably a classroom size, I would say, maybe. You know, kids can squeeze together on those things, maybe up to 2 classrooms potentially. Some kids on the floor. So it's just trying to provide multiple places for gathering. So this spot here, this spot here, this spot here. The gym, so we did bring this up at the materials working group just because it came to our attention that we were showing a junior high size basketball court in our gym, which allowed us to have bleachers that seated 210 people. But we learned that the junior high league really works now with a high school sized basketball court, and they would prefer a high school sized basketball court. So this is the plan showing the high school sized basketball court in the allotted 6,000 square feet that the MSBA allows. And the greatest number of bleachers that we can get is about 125 fixed bleachers. They wouldn't be retractable or movable bleachers. They'd be fixed on that west wall of the gym. So the thought came up about possibly expanding the gym slightly to get back to that 210 number, roughly. And we determined that we could do that and have adequate clearances around, safety clearances around the court by adding another 670 square feet to the gym. So we are going to price that as an alternate during schematic design and see where that goes. That would be non-reimbursable cost, but it seemed in that group that it's a really important feature for the school and the community and something that might be important for the success of the project to get to that size and that number of seating. Any thoughts about that? Thumbs up. Second floor, so we've developed this middle space a bit more. Zoom in on that. So we've got the 2 maker spaces on either side of the central corridor, the art room here. We're showing a shared print room between these 2 tech spaces off the corridor, and also accessible from the corridor for other people. So this might have the 3D printer and that kind of equipment in there. We're meeting with staff to talk about how these 2 spaces might be fit out, whether they're the same or a little different. But we are looking at operable partitions in each of these spaces that would allow them to open up and flow into that main corridor. We do have a big opening in the floor here. We'll have some daylight from windows here coming into this space down to that main stair. Another opening here that lets some light down to the library, media center. Large operable exterior door going out to the rooftop classroom, and 2 means of egress from the rooftop classroom, 2 means of egress from this room to the corridor. And yeah, that's about it. And large enough space for other things to happen in this central core space in the corridor, and not just be a corridor, some small group gathering spaces near that opening in the floor. So we talked with the materials group about different types of operable partitions or where we might use them and employ them. So this is the exterior. We reviewed 3 options, and this is the one that folks decided to go in the direction of. It's basically a single unit that just rises up, half interior, half exterior, cantilevered. And that would be the one at the makerspace out to the rooftop classroom, and then also the art room to the front rooftop area. And then interior, operable partitions. So we're looking at this skyfold door, this kind of door. It's an accordion door, but it's got a high STC rating that would drop down and close the stage. This can be whiteboard material or acoustical material. So this would close and allow this to be used as a classroom, and open and disappear and allow it to function as a stage with a horizontal sliding curtain in front. There'll also be a projection screen out front here that would drop from the ceiling. And then, again, we're still discussing whether there's a need for an operable partition or whether this could be a permanent wall here. But if we do an operable partition, it would be this kind of demounting 2-panel system, a manual system that would move off to the side. So this and the 2 previous ones that we showed for the exterior use would be mechanical operated. And then all of the interior classroom to corridor, we have to maintain a minimum STC rating of 38. So these do that. This glass folding partition is similar to the previous ones I just showed, the demountable in 2 panels each and manually put aside, except for they're glass. And we showed several options of these to the materials working group, and folks liked the one that didn't have a floor track in it, that didn't require anything on the floor. So we'll be pricing those out for schematic design. Any questions about that stuff? So then the first meeting we had with the materials working group, the group sort of focused in on a few images that we brought that were these 3 projects that were very traditional brick, predominantly masonry. Of course, these were all sloped roofs, and we've made the decision to move away from slope roofs to save costs. So we're still trying to work with this aesthetic of mostly brick and some other material. And so this is the beginning of what this is going to look like or might look like. As I said at the last meeting, these roofs we had sloped, so the high end was off to the side and the low end over here. So you saw at the front the sloping gable. But what we thought would be nice would be to slope them front to back, for one thing, to get daylight into that the flex space in the classroom corridors without skylights and north-facing light, and then also to have all of this roof area that's shown sloped, and including here on the cafeteria, is free from any mechanical equipment and totally dedicated to photovoltaics. So all the mechanical equipment would be on the flat roof sections in between. A stair would bring you access up to here, and because these stop at the back side of the flex space, you can move across across them to the other roof areas, and from here to the rest of the roof. And we think that would be pretty dynamic and a real statement on the front of the building, having the PV there. So we're detailing it out mostly brick with an alternative material right now that we're specifying as a metal shingle, sort of a diamond shingle, brick pattern, kind of a Flemish bond, and screens on the windows, shading screens that shade the east angle morning light and also southern exposure. And a little closer in, so a little detail in the brick from the windowsill up, a different type of treatment at the base that might rise up here, where we change materials at these pop-out areas with a sloped roof. That might be metal. So pretty simple form, pretty simple structural grid, and I think pretty economical overall. And this material, we showed several materials, I think, in the past, GFRC, a concrete material, or metal, and they price in about the same range. So if we decide to change that in the future, we can change that in the future as design develops. So that's an angle from the southwest. So the bus loop playground would be right out here. And the main entrance is over here. And this is the east classroom wing. You can see the roof steps up here slightly for that 2-foot grade difference over there. And then again from the opposite direction, from the southeast looking toward the building, the main entrance. And we haven't developed the entrance canopy yet. We're gonna spring that one on you later. But we'll carry a budget in the schematic design for that. We just haven't been able to focus on that yet. But we will have something interesting there, and probably will incorporate some bicycle storage under that as well. So this is just a section showing you how that roof runs from the front, slightly higher than the flat roof, runs from the front to the back side of the flex space with those north-facing windows letting the light in, which you saw in that rendering. This being the whole flex space in the corridor running down the middle, classrooms either side, lots of room here for running mechanical equipment. And we determined just with the slope roofs alone, we can get an 81 kW photovoltaic array, about $250,000 cost roughly, and a 9-year payback. So right now we're looking at specifying a window shading device, something like this, that could evolve as we get into design development, but it gives the opportunity for adding some color perhaps. And the windows, I think, could also, so the windows themselves could provide an opportunity for color. So in the classroom, every classroom has this series of windows, and that large window is the one on the interior that was the window seat that had the feature surround on it in the classroom space. So mechanical system payback. So our engineers were here a couple weeks ago. They have taken our model and all of the design elements, the building envelope, and looked at several systems. I handed out a sheet to you, and so what we're showing and what we're carrying forward is option 2A, which is the displacement dehumidification system. Which also air conditions certain spaces. It air conditions the cafeteria, the gym, the media center, administration, and special ed spaces only. And it's a little slightly higher cost on option 2, which is only dehumidification and no air conditioning. Not tremendously more, but has an instant payback. So, and their estimate is that it will perform 30% better than code and will achieve 12 lead points in optimized energy performance with that, which is well above the requirement for MSBA for the 2% reimbursement for that category. Any questions on that? So alternates we're going to be looking at. So the first one's the one I just introduced earlier, the expansion of the gym to achieve a larger count of bleachers. We thought, at least for information, bringing to you at the end of schematic design for inclusion or not, but for consideration. The shed exterior to the building, which we're showing here off of the rear of the loading area, not so far from the generator and the transformer. The PV system could be larger than that. There are other roof areas that would be available to expand on that if we wanted to. So we can do an analysis on that going forward as well. Rainwater reuse for irrigation was a question that came up in the sustainability working group, so we're going to provide a price for that in schematic design. Artificial turf at baseball field, so that came up with the outdoor working groups, so we'll be pricing that as an alternate we had in the previous estimate as well. It would be that whole field on the front, basically, I think, yeah. Ticket concession stand. So right now in our base bid, we're just going to be stubbing out utilities to that building, and we could carry a price or provide a price for what that might cost to add at the beginning of the project. And another item that came up during sustainability was the idea of adding solar canopies over the parking. And we haven't designed anything, but we thought we could show you what that might look like in terms of cost, and there could be a decision about whether that's something you want to pursue moving forward with. But I think that's a good number of alternates. We definitely would not want to move forward with that many alternates, I don't think, in bidding.
I wouldn't suggest that. We'll also need to determine what the priorities are. We go forward with these, there's going to know what we're looking for, and we'd also have to bid it, the public bids. You take the alternates in order. You can't take item 3 without also taking items 1 and 2. So it's a decision that you really need to just think through on participate how you want to do these. If it's a photovoltaic is a major design element, you might want to say that those in the bid, the ones that you see on the roofs, maybe that becomes part of the base bid, and if you want to go beyond maybe on PW, that becomes an option. I'm going to say expansion of the gym is something that's very important. The shed is, but you can only take so many in given bids. So it becomes, something you need to sort of think through and give up.
And all of these would be they would be fully at the cost of Millbrae. None of these the MSBA would share in the cost of. So that's important to know. But it will be information for you to make some decisions with, and hopefully they won't be heart-wrenching decisions. So proprietary items, we've brought this up in the last couple of meetings. We do have basically 2 items that we would like a vote on for proprietary items. I think the building committee votes on this.
The building committee needs to vote, and then ultimately the school committee has the ability to vote.
So that's the motion, and those are the 2 items that need to be voted on if you care to take that vote now. So one is the lock system, which is pretty standard. Schools like to standardize around a lock system across the district. And the other is was a recommendation from the IT department for network switches, and we will have some of these built into the security system. So most of that will be procured as FF&E or technology outside of the construction budget, or some of it will, but we will have some of them in the construction budget, so we need to have it identified as a proprietary item. And the MSBA requires identifying these at the schematic design submission.
So would-
Chair, are you looking for a motion to recommend the Millbury School Committee as proprietary for the previous lock system, and then a separate motion for the blue packet switches, or is it all one?
You could make it all one. It really needs to be this language. Oh, this is actually,
So I have to read the whole thing?
well,
Happy to do that.
Donna could record it.
Make a motion pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 39NB, competitive bidding statute, and upon research and recommendation by the project designer, the Millbury Feasibility Committee votes to recommend the Millbury School Committee as the awarding authority on the Ari Shaw School project that is in the public interest to specify the following items as proprietary. 1, Remus lock system, specific proprietary item. A, as it's in the public's interest to specify Remus lock system as proprietary because it will be compatible with all schools within the Millbury School District. B, 2, Hewlett-Packard switches, security IP paging, specific proprietary item. It's in the public's best interest to specify Hewlett-Packard switches as proprietary because it will be compatible with all other schools within the Millbury School District.
We need a second to that motion.
I second that motion.
All in favor? All opposed? Unanimous.
Thanks, Kate. So now David has the floor and the speaker.
Thank you, Peter. We are wrapping up the schematic designs. We're hoping to get it to the estimator within the next week or so. It'll take about 3 weeks for us to get the estimates back, reconcile them, and then in late June, we're expecting to come with the schematic design estimate to the building committee for you to approve, and that becomes the basis for the project funding agreement. So we'll be getting the estimates and also all other costs associated with the project to put a total project budget together. And I kind of wanted to go through a little bit on what the reimbursement is once we get the total project budget. As you know, the Millbury reimbursement rate, its base rate is 57.74%. The MSBA has already awarded 1.63% for your maintenance programs. That's part of the documentation that you had to put together during your initial initiation into the MSBA program. So they have scored that in their matrix and have awarded 1.63%. Then we're also estimating a 2%, the full 2% lead reimbursement credit. That's going to be part of it for a total of 61.73%. But that is on eligible costs. One of the things that we need to look at is that the MSBA in their program caps eligible costs. Certainly anything that's beyond their MSBA space summary or that's part of the project. I've had projects where as part of the project they had to renovate a section of another school that's part of the transition. That would be an ineligible cost. If there is a ball field, again, that's part of the project but is not part of the MSBA program, that will be an eligible cost. I will take the estimates and the bids, and they'll figure out what the building cost is, and then limit site cost to 8% of the building costs. They also cap building costs at currently it's $333 a square foot. They've been trying to increase that every year, but currently it's $333, and that will be the number that, as we are going to be submitting in the next couple of months, that's the number, the amount that is currently in the program. They probably won't change it until next year. Soft costs are 20% of building costs, and then furniture and technology is it's showing $1,200 a student. It's $1,200 for furniture and $1,200 for technology. So it really should be $2,400 a student. Very quickly, put together kind of a list of previous MSBA projects. This kind of goes back in time, but you can see I picked, so they're all elementary schools. You see what the project budget is and what the reimbursement rate was that the MSBA said. So the MSBA reimbursement rate in that column is what the MSBA designated for eligible costs. That will determine, once you do the project funding agreement, what the maximum grant amount is. So they figure out what the total project budget is, all the ineligible costs in terms of their program. And they've got a very sophisticated spreadsheet that works all that through once they get all of our estimates and building costs. Then the differential is what the local cost will be. And what you'll see in the final is what we call the effective reimbursement rate. That is the actual reimbursement rate that most these communities have gotten from the MSBA. And you see that there's usually a 10 to 12% difference between what, and it will vary project to project depending on what those issues that, or what the cost that the community has wanted. For instance, in Webster, they renovated the middle school locker room. That was part of the building cost, but it was ineligible. They put in a garage. That was part of the building cost, but it was ineligible. That's why in Webster, their reimbursement rate was 76.8%, but their effective reimbursement was 59.7%. And we're not going to really know what the final numbers are going to be until we really go through, we get the estimate, and we work through all, for what is ineligible and what isn't eligible. And that's why I just want to sort of bring it to the community so that you're not shocked when you see us coming through and saying, yes, your reimbursement rate is 61%, but we think you'd be prepared, and when you talk with the community at the vote, they should know that their effective reimbursement rate is going to be something less. That's really the story we just wanted to bring tonight.
So not knowing what was was ineligible for Douglas, they were at 62 and ended at just above 50, right? They're sort of in the same range.
Yeah,
of base and-
it's just historically, you look through and every project has a different story, but historically, you're looking at a 10 to 12, sometimes more difference between what the MSBA says your reimbursement rate is and what the communities actually got in terms of reimbursement.
And for instance, the more of those alternates you select, the lower your reimbursement rate is going to be, your effective reimbursement rate is going to be. That those will be carried by you 100%.
Right.
So, I just want to be clear, because it kind of sounds like a bait and switch going on here.
That's why we wanted to bring it up.
So over the next 7, 8, 9 months, one of our talking points in the community is going to be, we're eligible for 61% reimbursement. We're shooting for 61%, 61%, 61%. That's what we're going to keep repeating. And then we could literally come in and get 50% reimbursement.
Well, you will.
Yes.
You won't get that 60%. You never
Then
do.
why would we keep telling people that we're eligible for 61%?
Well, I think when we do the schematic budget, we will know what that, we'll know pretty closely what that.
Right. When we go to the project funding agreement, we'll be able to come back and tell you what the maximum, what that maximum grant is going to be.
I want a more accurate reflection of what we should be telling people we're going to get for reimbursement. I don't want to tell them some pie in the sky number and then say, wow, we didn't get that, we got a lot.
Yeah, Scott, that's.
I agree.
I think that the MSBA up front said, here's your initial reimbursement rate, don't tell anybody, because it's gonna change.
Yeah, but we're telling people.
So no, I
publicize it.
think for the benefit of this committee, we've been talking about the 61 number, but I publicly have been saying 50, roughly the neighborhood of 50. I've been intentionally vague because we don't know where it's gonna end up until later in the process.
Until we've actually worked through all the, what the numbers are, what our estimate for the site cost is versus the building costs, what the building cost is going to be. Because
I get it, but I mean, it's almost equivalent to saying, don't worry, this is a $40 million project. It turned out to be a $47 million project. I don't want to do either one of those.
no, I agree. And that's why we're trying to be upfront about it, to show you what historically communities will have. And when we do bring the budget to you and the final cost, this is going to be part of the discussion. At this point, we just wanted to let you know that there is a variance. I mean, it's not, the MSBA doesn't really come out and tell you historically, but all this documentation is on their website.
It is a little misleading. You really can't build a school without any ineligible costs.
No.
You can't
No.
be 100% eligible.
No.
So it is.
You know, and the MSBA, they don't do it on purpose, but they try to be even throughout all the communities. That's why they put the caps on. So you don't have some communities that want very extravagant schools and expect the same reimbursement rate.
But it is, for somebody that's not involved with it, can definitely be perceived as.
And it's been talked about with the MSBA that it is a difficult thing for communities to understand when you publish that you're going to get 61%, but when you work through the numbers, you're actually going to get 48%. And right up front, we want the committee to know that.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. We just have to be clear that we keep that separate breakout of, you know, what's eligible and what's not eligible. Hey, we decided to do this, even though we weren't getting any reimbursement for it. And I'm okay with that, as long as that's what we're telling the public.
Well, I agree. I mean, when we do the full project, because we are now estimating that construction costs is going to be around $500 a square foot. The MSBA is only going to reimburse 333 of that. So those are some of the decisions that we need to make. I think that's all I have.
So I'm correct in understanding that we say that this is what we're eligible for, but the MSBA really
then decides what it is they're willing to reimburse, and we won't know that until later on, once we give them.
Yeah, they don't really decide, it's just sort of in their
Okay.
formula how it parses out. So they won't, I mean, they do decide, like, that list of alternates, those are things that are decided, they will not participate in those.
Yeah.
But other things, like, you know, the 8% cap, that's just a universal thing, the $333 a square foot, that's universal for all communities, that's what they have.
And when we get
Even though
the estimates and we put together the total project budget with they call it the Form 3011, that they have a whole spreadsheet that you plug in the enrollment, determines what the square footage is, we put in the cost estimates, and literally it goes through and determines based on what is in their formula for what is and is not eligible, and it will spell out what that maximum grant's going to be. And so when we present that total project budget to the committee to vote on, we'll know what it is.
And then that gets adjusted with real numbers after the bid.
Right. Well, we'll take that the estimate, the schematic design estimate. That's why this is so important that we make these decisions early on, so we get the cost into our schematic design estimate, because that will be the basis of the funding that the MSBA is going to allow. The maximum. They will adjust it once we get the bids, but it will never go above that maximum value that they determine as schematic design. So that's why it's very important to make sure that we build everything in that the community wants into this estimate, that we make all these design decisions at schematic design so that we have a confident feeling that we've got enough money in the budget to build what it is that we're presenting to you. Okay?
So one question is, we carried over this slide into the community forum, and whether you want to present that.
I guess, to Chair, I want to present to this building committee. Is this something we want to discuss with the community? It's usually something we discuss once we have the real numbers and we explain to them, what the reimbursement really is. Usually at this point, we're really more focused on the design and what a wonderful school it's going to be, as opposed to getting the nitty-gritties of reimbursement. It's part of the presentation, but we can kind of put it on the back of the deck if that's the will of the committee.
I think maybe putting it back for a while.
Okay.
I'll just eliminate these slides.
Yeah, you can just take it out, because I had gone through kind of the budget thing on in there. So, very good.
Because we don't really know the number ourselves.
Well, that's why I wanted to make sure that we're not giving you an estimate at this
Yeah.
point. I don't want to put a number out there, because once we get everything in there, it's going to change a bit.
And I don't want to put a number out to the public and have it change either,
I agree. Okay. Very good. Oh, we still got to adjourn the committee.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm just.
No, we'll
just
wait.
gonna bring this up.
We'll wait.
You're going to carry the committee through the public forum?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I am on Greg's. Start the public forum.
Motion to leave the building committee.
Oh, yeah. We're going to close our meeting, so we need a motion to go
Motion to adjourn.
and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They're getting the presentation up. I want to welcome you to the public forum. This is the second public forum we've had, third public forum, I'm sorry. And at each public forum we have a little bit more information, and tonight we have a fairly solid idea of what sort of design we're looking at, and also not just the design of the building, but also the site layout. And I know that our project team, David Billings, who is our OPM, you're going to be coming up next, and Peter Trowski from Trowski 2 are going to be presenting a little bit of an overview about the project so far. And I think there are two things really where we're looking for tonight. The first is to get information out to you, but second, to hear back from you. most specifically about what you like about the project as it's being proposed, what your concerns might be, and what suggestions you might have. So we want to make sure we're clear about giving you that information, but pausing at any time to receive information or questions from you. So there's no wrong time to raise your hand and ask a question. Feel free to interrupt them. They're used to it. And so having said that, I want to turn it over to you, David.
Sure. We're still kind of working our deck a bit.
And just one more reminder, if you do have a question from the audience, if you could wave me over, I'll give you the microphone so that folks at home can hear what your question is.
We all set? There we go. Thank you very much, Greg, and thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm David Billings. I'm Project Director at Hill International. We're the OPMs on the project, and we'd like to sort of do a quick recap of what the process we're in. As you know, we've been invited and we're partnering with the Massachusetts School Building Authority to build a new Shaw Elementary School. This is the project team. We're really, we're working with the community and through the community to do this. Hill is the project manager, and T2 is the design architects. The town was invited in 2017 into the MSBA's core program, one of only 15 communities that were invited that year. So you can see there are this is a very competitive market to get into the MSBA core program. And it was very exciting for the community to do that. The MSBA invited the town to look at two options, a grade 4 to 6 school for 415 students and a grade 3 to 6 school for 550. We've gone through the eligibility period and then started the project team. The project team came on in kind of spring and summer of 18. We have completed the feasibility study, and the conclusion of that is to build a new school for grades 3 through 6. We are now into modular 4, which is the schematic design. That's where we take the preferred schematic that we had developed and develop it into a very detailed design so that we can get solid cost estimates to go back to the MSBA for a funding agreement. And then the town, once we have a funding agreement, then the town will have a town election on, actually it's I think November 12th, and then a town meeting on November 18th. So again, very quick recap. We kind of started in May of 2017. It's taken us about a year to get through putting the team together and to get through a feasibility study where we looked at all the different options and we priced them up and then brought it to the committee to vote on the project that we'd be going forward in. We are completing the schematic design, which Peter will be presenting tonight. Within the next week, we will be bringing it to cost estimators. T2 has their cost estimators. Hill's going to do a separate cost estimate so that we can compare to those estimates and have a good confidence that what we're coming forward with is the correct budget for the project. Once we get approval from the MSBA, which is going to be in August, we will bring it again to the town. The town needs to do an override vote, so we'll have a special town election that's now scheduled for November 12th, and then a town meeting for November 18th. Assuming that those are positive votes, we'll go into design development. Again, there will be a series of cost estimates as we're developing the design and the construction documents. We'll also be pre-qualifying general contractors during this period so that we are planning to go out to bid in December, January, or December of 2020, an award in February of 2021, start construction on the new building, and Peter can go through a little bit of site plan, but the existing building's going to be down here. We're able to construct the new building while keeping the kids in the current building. This allows us to start the construction before actually the summer, so we can get an early start on it. We think pretty confident that we can get the construction done by spring of the following year. Then we'll take down the existing building once the kids are out in the end of June and construct the fields and the rest of the parking lot. And the building will be open for fall 2022 school year. Again, during the schematic, the feasibility study, we looked at all the different options, renovating the existing building, doing ad renos of various sizes and different grade configurations. We looked at sort of 2 different building options, and the decision was to go with option C5, which is this design. And we looked at, we did cost estimates of each of the different options. We're now looking at, an option for C5 is between 56 and 58 million is in terms of total project cost. Again, we're looking at a bunch of alternates, but this is the concept cost that we've developed, and we think we're going to be fairly close to this. But again, we will be presenting our final estimates and project budget to the building committee by the end of June, so that we can submit to the MSBA in July to make their August board meeting. And on that, I'm going to turn it over to Peter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Peter Churowski, Principal Architect with T2 Architecture. I'm going to turn it over to our landscape architect right away, Peter Flinker from Dodson Flinker Landscape Architects.
All right, so just to orient you, this is the existing school building and the existing parking and bus turnaround area and ball fields to the north and to the east. And as you know, the idea is to keep this school open, so that limits the options of where you put the new school, and where it's been determined to put the new school in basically in the north part of the site, keep this school open, and then when it's done, to tear that down and replace the old school and the old parking lot with a large combined baseball and multi-use field. So the idea is to keep the existing pavement along the edge to have the main arrival to the campus, and then when you get to this point, the buses will go into a bus loop. It'll be buses only for drop-off and pickup. All parents and visitors and teachers will go to the right and park in a parking lot to the east side of the school, and drop-off will follow the outside of the parking lot and drop off in front over there. Here's a easier one to see, so you can see how we have essentially 3 lanes approaching the school, or 2 lanes approaching the school and 1 departing. So buses turn to the left into the bus loop. Parents and teachers pull around here. So there's plenty of room for the parents to queue up along the sidewalk and drop off in the morning. And then in the afternoon, if they need to park and go into the school, they can use these parking places and go on that side. So the idea is to separate the bus and the car traffic. This also provides the benefits that after the buses drop off, which of course is a relatively brief period of time in the morning, this can be closed off and there'll be no more traffic into this part, and it'll become part of the recess playground system, so they can use both the hard surface of the paved bus loop, and then also within the center of the loop there can be space for play equipment. And we've been working very hard with the committee to figure out what kinds of play equipment might be appropriate, what's needed for the different levels of school children, and so on. And then there's wonderful opportunities for outdoor play and also outdoor gathering spaces around the different parts of the school. So on this side there's going to be a general sort of arrival space and also an outdoor space outside the cafeteria. On the north side of the school there's all the service access and truck drop off and and transformers and so on. So that gets that out of sight and also provides convenient access to the cafeteria and the kitchen. But also outside of the gym will be a paved basketball court, outdoor play area, and then also this opens up opportunities for the gym to also use space within the woods for a low ropes course and other ideas that can sort of bring kids out into the landscape as part of the school curriculum. During recess, students will come out in several different areas. The younger students will use the large playground area immediately outside of the 3 and 4 grade classroom wing, and then older kids can use the ball fields and also possibly a volleyball court and sort of gathering space on this side. And then outside the center wing will be a courtyard which could be used for physical therapy and occupational therapy students, also some garden spaces, and then also some outdoor classroom spaces that could include some water-related experiments and water play, and then also access to a sort of a nature trail that will go out into the wetlands. And so this is kind of a diagram of that, the red being active play areas, free play for recess, and the blue being physical education and occupational therapy spaces. And so we're in the midst of looking at lots of different options, a lot of interesting things that could happen on this school because it's surrounded by so much interesting open space, this wonderful forest, and sort of a rolling landscape. So we want to incorporate the new equipment to really literally fit into that surrounding landscape. So instead of slides that are freestanding, we can set the slides into some of the slopes. We can have, instead of just climbing up the edge of a slope, we can have stepping stones or stepping logs. We can have structures that are constructed out of logs with nets to provide what we think is kind of a maximum interest both to we sort of think of engaging both the body and the mind. So rather than just the same kind of play equipment that kids have seen everywhere, it can be a very much more engaging kind of play equipment. Also, in terms of active play, we're looking at different elements such as the volleyball and basketball courts, but also possibly disc golf and even a gaga pit, which you should ask your children or grandchildren about if you've never heard about. Also, as part of the school curriculum, we're thinking of having what's called a low ropes course, which provides opportunities for kids to get out into the landscape and solve problems and do activities together. And this is would be happening in some of these outer areas outside the gym. And the idea is here on like a balancing table, you learn to work together to balance, literally to balance that rocking platform. There can be traversing walls that are sort of designed as climbing walls, but you don't go up, you go across. And that kind of thing, again, that's very engaging and helps kids to learn about using their bodies while they're having fun. So then there's more formal gathering and outdoor education spaces. We already talked a little bit about accessing the sort of wetlands north of the school with a nature trail. There's also a wonderful opportunity to bring a trail out into essentially what's a natural amphitheater in the woods south of the existing small ball field. And then outside of the school itself, there's a series of sort of entry plazas and also potential garden spaces and outdoor classroom spaces. And so again, this is to sort of bring the activities of the school into the outdoors. And one of the ideas is to build on the history and culture of Millbury by celebrating the use of water and water power, which of course kids learn about in class, but then they can actually use that and literally play with water that could be stored in a tank coming off the roof and then released into a variety of engaging activities where kids can learn about how water power works and also operate different machinery and so on. We're really trying to incorporate this idea of green infrastructure, which is sort of going past the traditional gray infrastructure of a catch basin and a pipe going out to a stream, and replacing that really with spaces that capture the rainwater in a more natural way, where you have a garden that also is holding rainwater. And that can look like this in a parking lot. It can be a low spot under, at one end of the parking lot that helps to hold the water, but is also filled with plants and flowers. In the landscape, you can have areas that look like natural wetlands, but they're also fairly carefully constructed to hold that water and do the things that we need to do to prevent stormwater erosion, but also provides an amenity to the campus of the school. And that's the end. We want to take any questions about outdoor spaces before we turn our attention indoors? All right, then.
So I would like to say that we've been working with this building committee, but we've also been working in small working groups, which have included people from this building committee, staff from the school, and also members of the community on topics like focusing on things like the outdoor uses, the ball fields, sustainability and sustainable features of the building, security, materials of the building and durability and that sort of thing. So there's been a lot of individual small group meetings to work toward this these solutions. So this is the final plan as it's developing. It's a 2-story building. And again, it's for grades 3 through 6. So the grade 3 will be moving up from Elmwood and joining the Shaw School. And essentially, the building will be designed with a classroom wing at the front of the building with administration in the center and a main entrance. So this entrance would be the secure entrance. That is the only point of entry during the day. Good visibility into the office and in a 2-step system of entry into the school. And an SRO office, so the safety resource officer would have a space here at the school as well. Excuse me. On either side would be classroom wings. The classroom wing on the left would be grades 3 and 4. On the right would be grades 5 and 6. And the classroom wings are a group basically with 6 classrooms per grade in all grades but 3. That the way that the school functions is that they team teach. So there are 2 teachers for a core group of children. One teacher focuses on math and science, and one focuses on English language arts and social studies. So the children move between those 2 classrooms. The 3rd grade would be in their homeroom. Sorry, I was pointing to the 3rd grade here. And then exterior of the classroom is a sort of shared space for small group work. Education isn't like it was when many of us went to school, where we sit at a desk and the teacher's up at the front of the classroom pointing to a lesson on the board. It's much more dynamic with a lot of things happening in a classroom and different group sizes working collaboratively. So this gives the opportunity for small groups to develop out here, maybe even across classrooms. The purple in the plan are all of the support spaces, so tutorial spaces and special needs spaces close by to the students that they serve, unlike some of the older schools where they were off sort of in a corner at the back of the building. Again, administration and health right at the front. The media center right at the heart of the building. Right now at Shaw School, the media center is sort of in the middle of the school and separated from the gym and cafeteria. And it would be very useful for the very active after-school program. So this placement in the core of the building with the cafeteria, the gym, and the media center make it much more functional for after-school use and for community use. And essentially, this blue section of the building is the community use section of the building. The media center, the gym, the cafeteria and kitchen, and a stage. And the building could be secured off here at these wings, so nobody could get beyond there after hours. There'd be a separate entrance into a cafeteria. There's also an entrance from the outside to the back of the gym where there are restrooms and an interior door that's locked, so that this could be used possibly after hours when there's a game in the field and restrooms are needed. So a large gym that has a high school-sized basketball court to serve the junior high and other community leagues. A large cafeteria with a stage, which is shared with the music room and paired with the music room, so the music room can expand into there, and this will be a very flexible space with movable partitions that will allow it to segregate off and be used in different ways. And a large welcoming stair at the front, and then fire exits at the end. This is a close-in look at the typical classroom cluster. So we're working with a pretty standard, economical modular furniture that can be arranged in a variety of ways, both sort of clustered together to create table situations for group work or individual desks, or just even grouped just in numbers of 2 around the room. So these are the individual classrooms surrounding the core flex space. There'd be individual little tutorial spaces right outside the classroom doors here where students could meet with a special instructor perhaps, or students could work independently outside the classroom with good visibility, a lot of glass here so teachers could keep an eye on students that are working independently. And one thing I didn't point out also is that the main axis of the classroom corridor runs east and west. So all the windows are facing either north or south, which is the best orientation for solar control and glare. Excuse me. This is just a quick view of what the interior of a classroom might be looking toward the window wall. So we've sort of, show you on the elevation, we're trying to work with a module opening of 8 feet or less that will allow simple sort of construction methods for supporting the openings on the exterior. We're using a lot of brick. And so, and also to sort of reflect some of the mill buildings in town and mill architecture, which have, as you know, very standardized mill punched openings in brick, but make it a little more playful with some different breaking up of sizes, and then one special window in every classroom that might be a window seat where kids could gather and work together in a small group as well. So trying to develop as many of these smaller spaces where things can happen aside from just the general classroom. This is the flex space that's at the center of a classroom cluster of 6 classrooms. So the corridor runs through, but you can see it sort of flows together side to side. The lockers sort of separate off spaces, these small spaces outside the classroom where the teachers could keep an eye on students or specialists could work with a student. We're developing this idea of a clear story, letting light in from the north. So there's no glare, it's indirect light. So it's a nice diffuse light that will filter into the center of the school and down below through these floor openings to the first floor as well. The media center is sort of the heart of the school. So this is a space that we're envisioning this wall to be very glassy and open. So it'll be a combination of display cases and windows and seating nooks that you see through as you walk along from front to back. There'll be clear story windows that let light into this corridor. This will be down a couple of feet from the main floor to gain some height in the ceiling because there's a rooftop outdoor classroom, which I failed to point out on the floor plan, off of a makerspace. Really zoned into distinct areas for different kinds of activities to happen within that space. A large central stair that will expand to another gathering space here. And then along the pathway back to the cafeteria and gym, we're elevating the stage and the music room. So taking advantage of that by taking that elevation outside these walls and creating some sort of stadium-like seating along that corridor for more flexible gathering space within the school. So gym size, we've been talking about the size of the court requirements for the junior high league and the optimal number of bleachers for community use and also for school use. So the MSBA in their formula of space for elementary schools allows a 6,000 square foot gym, which is smaller than the gym that the Shaw School has now by about 800 square feet. I think 806 to be exact. And with a high school size basketball court, which is what the junior high league uses now because that's what is at the Shaw School and what they desire, it really limits the ability to provide bleachers on one side of the gym, and we can get about 125 seats with fixed bleachers on one side of the gym. So by expanding that gym, not quite as large as the gym that the Shaw School has, slightly less, we can get up to 210 bleacher seats, and they could be also retractable, so they could be pushed against the wall and open more floor area. So we're going to be looking at that cost, the added cost of increasing that gym slightly, because we think the the building committee thinks that it would be more functional and useful for the community to have more seating in the gym. And then the second floor, very similar to the first floor, classroom pods, classroom clusters at the end with the flex spaces in the middle. So this is 6th grade, this is 4th grade, special needs and special instruction tutorial spaces close to the classrooms. And at the very heart of the school here, up that main central stair, there'd be 3 shared spaces, 2 what we're calling STEAM technology engineering rooms or maker spaces, and the art room at the core. And one of these maker spaces opening up to a rooftop outdoor classroom. So this is a blow up of what that might look like. So right now we're planning on, again, this rear maker space having an operable door that opens up to a roof door classroom. So it really expands the space to be twice the size and with functioning between the exterior and the interior. Also operable partitions on the interior of these spaces so that this central core area, they can all open up together and maybe function as a larger whole. Some flexible use space in the middle. A shared print room for 3D printers and that sort of thing off the corridor so that it isn't just used by these maker spaces, but also can be used by teachers in their classrooms, bringing students there. So a pretty dynamic space. And a lot of light filtered from above. There'll be clear stories here letting light into that stair, and also through here down into the skylight, letting light down into the media center. So we've talked a lot about materials and what the building should look like. Really came with a core working group that we're working with, and I think the building committee really settling on brick as being the major material component of the exterior of the building and trying to achieve a rather traditional look. So these are some images. We brought lots of images in to look at. These are the 3 schools that folks sort of identified with as sort of fitting to Millbury. Very traditional looking. However, we're designing a flat roof building, not a slope roof building. We do have some slope roof portions. So we're trying to work with that aesthetic of traditional brick and in a flat roof structure. So this is a bird's eye view looking from the southeast. So the entrance drive comes up here and the bus loop goes off in front of the building over here and the parking lot is over here. This is the main entrance. There will be a canopy over this we haven't designed yet. There's a little outdoor rooftop space off the classroom at the front, facing south. And then there's a rooftop classroom off the makerspace in the back. And all of these slope roofs that are colored with this striped gray are due south-facing, and they would support photovoltaics. So the idea is that all of this sloped roof is free of any obstructions like exhaust fans or plumbing vent pipes and that sort of thing. And it's a clear statement at the front of the building of, solar generation, power generation at the front of the building. This is a view looking in a little closer from the southwest. So this is the 3rd grade classroom at the bottom, 3 classrooms above 4th grade, the flex space in the middle with that light monitor on the back side of that slope, the exit stair at the bottom at the end, which also leads to the roof for access to rooftop equipment, which will be up here and probably screened. We'll be looking at that more as we get the sizes of equipment and put them on the roof. We'll be looking at it in perspective from actual grade in the model to see how visible they are and whether we need to screen them or not. We're going to try to avoid screening as much as possible if we can, because it is an expense. Some alternative material where these slope roofs are, and the building pops out a little bit for those classrooms, maybe using an alternative metal material there. And at the stair towers right now, we're specifying a metal type of siding that's a shingle pattern, seamed shingle pattern. And then, a strong base with a more lively pattern of brick field on the upper stories. And then on the south side, also solar shading devices on the windows. So this is a typical classroom. You can see there's a variety of windows, and this is that large window that has the seating area within the classroom. Another close in from the other angle, southeast. So as I said, we've got about about 10,400 square feet of surface space just on the slope roofs alone, which we estimate can support an 81 kW PV system, have a cost of about $250,000. It would pay for itself in 9 years in terms of energy generation. So we'll be bringing that cost forward to the building committee for consideration at the end of schematic design. And it's something that could be added later also through a leasing program. If you buy it yourself, you can get points through the LEED system, but you don't have to. This is a section showing that sloped roof and how it stops here with that window coming into the center core flex space to let that north light into the center of the building. We've looked at several mechanical systems. I know this is very hard to read. And we actually toured several buildings with different mechanical systems with the building committee and staff members. And everybody pretty unanimously felt comfortable with a system that's described as a displacement ventilation system, which is also provides dehumidification, which is effectively like air conditioning, but not air conditioning. It's not full air conditioning. So in most of the swing type season weather of fall and spring, it would satisfy the demand for cooling or make the spaces feel cool. So the straight dehumidification system with no air conditioning at all is slightly less expensive. We have opted for option 2A, which does air condition certain spaces, special needs spaces, the administrative offices where people will be working year round, the library, gym, and cafeteria because they'll be community use year round. So those are air conditioned. Right now, we're estimating that the building will perform 30% better than code in terms of energy cost, and will get us 12 LEED points. That will be refined as we move forward, but that's based on the building system and also the building envelope and orientation of the building and many factors that play into that estimated savings. And I think that's what we have tonight, but we're happy to answer any questions you might have. And
For the air conditioning, is the school not going to be used for summer school at all?
Oh, sorry. For summer schools, the building not going to be used at all for summer school if there isn't going to be any air-conditioned classrooms?
So I can answer that. It doesn't mean just because we don't have air-conditioned classroom, it doesn't mean that we don't have the opportunity to cool the building. So it's the cooling system that'll exist. Right now, Shaw doesn't have a cooling system. So the opportunity will exist should the district decide to use it.
But I will say one of the system that we're looking at, we actually toured a school in Carver that had just opened, and we toured it in the beginning of the school year in September, and I think it was over 90 degrees the whole week we were there leading up to the opening of school. It was very, very hot and humid weather. And that building had just the displacement, no air conditioning system. And it was very, very comfortable. Everyone noticed it, and the staff had been there a full week and had noticed it being very comfortable. When we were there, the students were there as well. So it was fully occupied.
Yeah, when I was on that tour, I thought it was air conditioned. I was surprised to know that they didn't have air conditioning. So Peter, if I could segue to a big picture comment about this plan. And I'd just like to offer that this plan resolves three of, I think, the most challenging facilities issues that the district has. The first is it addresses our issues with Shaw, right, which we've investigated fully and we've realized we have to do something about. So this new building will do that, but also you'll notice that it's a 3 through 6. And so by bringing the third grade up from Elmwood, we've resolved any kind of enrollment capacity issues at Elmwood for the foreseeable future. We're able to free up those classrooms in case there's a spike in our enrollment. And secondly, we're able to move the high school baseball field to the new Shaw site. And that resolves an issue with our athletic fields because we've been looking at renovating our fields for quite a while. If you know, behind the high school we have a D-shaped track, which is in very poor shape. We have a baseball field that is inside that track, which I don't know if there are any other schools in the country who have that design. And it's a design that's not really meeting our needs anymore. But because we couldn't find a suitable site for the baseball field, we weren't able to make any changes behind the school because we had to remove the baseball field to redo the track. By doing this and getting a little bit of help from MSBA to do it, we're going to be able to now remove the baseball field back here and renovate those fields. And it just so happens that our athletic director, Pat Marr, is here. And I was going to wonder if you could share a few thoughts about the project right now and what the plans might be.
It's going to take a while. Just go with it.
Thank you, Greg. So, ruckus crowd here. Appreciate having the opportunity to come out tonight, and discuss something that's been in the works or been in my office's kind of thought process for the last 6 years. 6 years ago, we contacted Gale Associates to do a kind of a comprehensive study of our athletic facilities and identify some key points in situations of concern, and also some things of where improvements could be made. And certainly through that process, which has been lengthy and certainly time consuming, we've learned a lot about what our facility has, some of our needs, and with some of the facilities that have kind of popped up around us, what a potential facility upgrade might look like for our athletic department. Currently, as Greg mentioned, our constraints at the high school site are pretty noticeable. Having baseball inside of a track, both being spring sports, presents a significant amount of scheduling concerns in the spring season, especially with the addition of unified track, where there's some weeks that we have 2 to 3 track meets a week. Scheduling those around baseball and softball games has proven to be somewhat challenging. So with the kind of when this Shaw project kind of got going, and Greg and Rick Bedard had some conversations through the athletic department, and seeing that this is a potential option to have baseball find another home, did allow us to really kind of sink our teeth into what a high school renovation would look like, and kind of presenting a really unique opportunity for the athletic department to put forth a big stamp at the high school site, along with the construction at Shaw. And certainly with the baseball field relocating, it allowed us to do that. And it allowed us to kind of get a little further in the process. And certainly, we've met with Gale Associates now, just a couple of weeks ago. We have a meeting next Tuesday to kind of further our thoughts and our designs about where we think we're headed. But certainly, with baseball kind of out of the picture, it allows us to really look at what we can do systematically here to make our athletic facilities a little bit more user-friendly, more scheduling-friendly, and certainly allows us to dovetail pretty nicely with the MSBA project and all the work that's been put into Shaw going from here. So, sweet. Yeah, I'll take that. Just, I won't go through a lot. I kind of just mentioned significant amount of but here's a kind of an overview of what we have currently. I know I personally am very proud of our athletic department. We have a significant amount of student athletes that participate, had some success locally and certainly statewide in the last few years. So our coaches and our student athletes work extremely hard to produce the best they can, sometimes in absence of a quality facility to participate in. Most notably, this year, obviously, with a significant amount of rainfall and historic weather, we have had to move a lot of things, and our coaches and our student athletes have really been really tremendous throughout this process, in at times very challenging situations, and they've handled themselves remarkably well, and I'm certainly proud of their efforts. We do have a lot of facility use in terms of as the Shaw project continues, and community is a big part of that, and it's also a big part of our athletic facilities. Essentially, there's a significant amount of community use on our athletic facilities outside of our school time. So, essentially almost every site has some form of athletic participation from a community perspective. at the site. So certainly we're not only utilizing it for our school sports teams, but the community is using it for that space as well. So again, that's just kind of an overview of our unique situation, our D-shaped track, 5 lanes. The track is certainly existing in some rough shape, and having baseball inside of that, you can obviously see the dimensions of the field are slightly off from a normal regulation baseball field, as well as the radii of the track is tight in the just have a pointer. Oh yeah, look at that, right over here. So a 400-meter track has a particular radius that the NFHS recommends, and that radius is very close, if not potentially a little over the kind of the percentage grade that they look for in terms of a 400-meter striped track. If you see kind of our lines, they're maybe not the best. You wonder who put them down, but they did, and we run on them. So our improvement is needed, kind of as we've already mentioned. Baseball is certainly scheduling, obviously programmatically, and also just the conditions of the facilities that we're scheduling on. There are certain needs there as well. So just some kind of photographic evidence of what we're looking at. Our lights are significantly cost prohibitive. They're older, and the ballast in the bulbs are certainly not the most energy efficient, as we kind of talk about that in the shop project. Some stormwater issues, some facilities on the playing surface that don't promote the most safest areas of play. It's certainly something that can be improved. Certainly our track, and this picture actually was from today, and it's not the greatest, but it looks like Lake Erie out there if you were in it. Which certainly we've had a lot of rain recently, which has kind of been a detriment to a lot of athletic programs in the area. So this kind of Gail's approach here, we're in kind of really the master plan concepts, and we're meeting with Gail and kind of continuing to work on our ideas about programming for our high school site now that the Shaw is moving forward with a baseball field there. So we're kind of in that middle of that process. This is the most recent schematic design from Gale Associates that would kind of overlay this is their ideas, I guess. Have a new rectangular synthetic turf field, which would be football and soccer or any rectangular sport. If we so choose to expand our offerings, it would field hockey, lacrosse, any rectangular sport would be certainly suitable on a facility like that, especially with soccer being the largest. Softball field to the north would move closer to the wetland area and to the delineation line. There would be a new concessions and amenities building, which would kind of be the fulcrum of the entrance and exit to the facility, trying to cut down on, currently we offer 3 different entrances to the football games, and if you live at Miss Friedman's house, you can kind of walk down through the woods. So hopefully we'll try to make sure Micah and his friends pay in the future, should they not be on the sideline. We are looking at in this area some sort of rectangle for practice. I think one of the things that we noticed when we were designing or kind of discussing different options is, if there's a game going on the multipurpose field, where are our other teams practicing? Football, we offer 3 levels. Soccer, we offer 5 to 6 levels. And certainly we have other facilities around town, but if we're having a JV football game, where do the soccer teams practice, or where do if there's soccer games going on, where does varsity football practice? So getting some sort of rectangular space to allow us to do that. This would encroach on the Orchard Street parking lot, which is here. It would no longer be any spaces there. It would just be a kind of an emergency access point, which I believe the Orchard Street folks may be excited about in terms of kind of decreasing the traffic on that road, and certainly being a little more mindful of that. It would put some parking kind of to the north, where that is the existing track shed. So this is almost where the long jump pit is currently, and then also kind of increasing some spaces in the lower lot to accommodate some much needed parking spaces, especially obviously our town is significantly, or the town is centrally located, and certainly a venue. I don't know why I keep moving this way. Sorry, Mr. Plant. Certainly a venue where there could be opportunities for us to host, several significant events, whether it be rectangular or track-wise. We certainly would be a location that not only the district or the section, but potentially even the state would be interested in terms of bringing their events or venues here. Closer to all the proximity, different roadways and things like that. So it certainly would allow us to do that, and with increased parking spaces, kind of alleviate some of that concern of some larger events. I think that's about it. Just, essentially kind of revamp up here and kind of allow us to dovetail into the Shaw construction project, allow baseball to have that new site, and then kind of really dive into, really kind of creating something very special for our athletic department up here. So I certainly would be happy to entertain any questions. I don't know if I'll know the answer, but I'll do my best, or talk to Mr. Bedard, and he'll have the answer. Yes.
My concern is more for the girls' softball field, and since it's really not going to do much, it's not going to change much, could we make that a primary concern for them? I mean, we've always been secondary, actually. We have always been like last on the list of improvements. And I really feel they should maybe come first, since they're not really...
So just because it does a kind of a poor job of I guess explaining the magnitude of the change for softball. The softball field, it is only moving about 40 to 50 feet, but it is a significant change. It would be completely stripping the entire site, adding drainage, adding much needed drainage, adding irrigation, as well as completely kind of regrading the surface. And that's why the rectangle here also helps, because it allows us to kind of alleviate softball from any sort of practice facility that we may be using it for now. Even though this particular year we didn't really do that very much. So certainly improving the softball quality at the high school is very important to us, and very important to the project, because without softball being a predominantly, without it being able to be rectified from what it is currently, it's certainly a big piece of what we're doing here. So just because it's moving slightly, it does have a little bit more prominence than it looks in this photograph.
I know, but is it going to come last again? Because we always, since last summer, when the baseball field got, from one of us, I don't know, whomever, came into town and put, whatever they did, tuning their field.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, because they didn't really need it. The softball field needed it. So rather than making baseball and football a primary, could we make softball the primary, since we really don't need that much adjustments?
Yeah, and I mean, I think, we have certainly tried to improve the softball playing facilities. Whether it be Windle Field, that we've certainly top dressed. Softball, we've spent a significant amount of money trying to improve both sites. And certainly softball is a priority for us in terms of finding a complete home. I mean, we certainly took into consideration, when we were thinking about where baseball would fit, making sure softball still had the opportunity to participate at Windle Field, where the youth program certainly sits. Currently, Windle Field is our best softball field in town right now in terms of drainage and infield mix and things like that, which we have added in the last year and a half to 2 years. So we've done some improvements there as well. So I think we have done, we have worked to try to improve both softball facilities so that they can become, opportunities for both our programs to participate in it, as well as the Millbury Youth Softball as well. Yes.
So I think my question would be, when you're looking at this, are you, with these fields, is this a fields project, or are there stages for the project?
Thank you for your question. when I look at this, I see a fields project, but with room for growth, and certainly the ability to, improve on what we can improve now, and certainly the appetite for an athletic improvement, will certainly need to be gauged, and that's why, linking up with Mr. Myers tonight and really trying to kind of reinvigorate this conversation so that we can get out into the public and do just as well as the Shaw Building Committee has done to get out and show everyone the work that's been done. We've done a significant amount of work for this project as well. So I think we're just trying to showcase that, get that conversation going again, so we can have open dialogue about concerns or questions or things that could make the project better. I do also believe that projects like this come around once in a career. For someone potentially like me in the athletic director's role, and I certainly want to try to kind of check a lot of boxes in terms of some of the struggles that we've had within one fell swoop, if you may, or if I will, or however that goes. So I think, do I see phases of this? I do, in terms of, even at Shaw, I think there's room where, the boosters or us as an athletic department can really make that space a little better and kind of make it, a little more of our own per se, or try to separate church and state a little bit, which I think has always been, you guys have been gracious hosts, and we appreciate that significantly. But I also want to be able to have your aftercare participate in aftercare things without worrying about us. Similarly here, I want to be able to have a track meet and not worry about a 400 runner getting hit in the face with a line drive. And I think there is certain things that this project or a proposed project wouldn't do, but I also think there's a lot of things the proposed project could do to really assist not only the athletic department but the town as well, and I think that's kind of our goal. So I think it might answer. I'm not sure.
So, Mr. Marr, I know that Gale Associates, the engineering company, they're still doing some cost estimating, so we don't have a figure for tonight, but it is something that we hope to piggyback on the same special town meeting as the Shaw vote. It will not be part of the Shaw vote, but this project proposal will be a second vote that night. So people will be asked to consider the Shaw building project, and then immediately afterwards will be asked to consider the renovation of the fields behind the high school.
Yes, I believe that's my understanding, and we
so,
appreciate being asked to come along.
And as Gail has that cost information available, we will be making it public so people understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, as soon as we're, the first cost estimate go around is certainly a more generic, general cost estimate, and something that we're not necessarily, there's a lot of design elements that are still kind of in the works and in discussion. So I think once we have a much more solidified cost estimate, it's going to be something that we, broadcast as much as possible and make people aware of, because I know there's certainly lots of questions about synthetic turf and infill, and I know there's a lot more questions out there, and we're certainly willing to have those discussions and answer those questions as best we can, especially when it comes to cost versus short-term, long-term cost, and making sure that we check the boxes, but also make sure we're doing so in being very fiscally responsible as well. So I think we're trying to make sure we do that in our meetings with Gale. Tuesday will be Gale has already come out and done geotechnical borings. They've had a lot of site design. They've had their engineers come out and do a lot more site planning and things of that nature. So next Tuesday, when Rick and Greg and I meet with Gale again, certainly we'll have a much better picture, much more clear picture of kind of cost and some of the options that we have in terms of keeping the cost down, but also trying to improve some of the particular challenges that we face at the current time.
Anybody have any questions about the school project or the high school project?
And I know it's been answered way back early on, but back to the outdoor Shaw School plan.
Mm-hmm.
How many legit parking places
131.
And how many are there today?
104.
104. Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Appreciate it, and look for more news as it comes out.